I need you to picture this with me. A Friday night, the kind that feels routine, even boring. The table is set, candles flickering, plates clinking. My mom's voice drifting in from the kitchen, reminding me to sit up straight, my father already scrolling through his phone, and my sister sipping wine like she doesn't have a care in the world. I thought it was just another family dinner. I was wrong. Halfway through the main course, my dad suddenly looked up from his glass of Merlot and locked eyes with me. His voice cut the room in half. Jessica, the $500,000 I gave you, where is it? My fork froze halfway to my mouth. $500,000? Given to me? It made no sense. I laughed, thinking it was a bad joke, some clumsy attempt at humor, but he didn't smile. His knuckles whitened around the stem of his glass. My mom's hand trembled as she set her spoon down. What would you do if your own father called the cops on you? That's not a rhetorical flourish. That's literally what happened next. The air went cold. My dad's voice rose, accusing me of betrayal, of theft, of dishonor. He listed dates, wire transfers, bank statements. My name was on every single one of them. My name, my signature. I tried to explain, tried to protest. Dad, I don't know what you're talking about. I never touched your money. But the words sounded weak, even to my own ears. He had documents, he had receipts. And my sister, Victoria, just sat there, quiet, sipping her wine. Her silence cut deeper than his rage. The knock on the door came like a gunshot, heavy fists pounding against the wood. My father stood up, shoulders squared, and opened it. 2 officers stepped into our home. Their uniforms gleamed under the chandelier light, their hands resting casually but purposefully near their belts. Are you Jessica Miller? Yes, I whispered. You're under investigation for fraud and embezzlement. The room spun. I could hear my mother gasp, could feel the blood drain from my face. I wanted to scream. I wanted to laugh at the absurdity. But all I could do was stare at the floor as the officers began reading my rights. In that moment, my whole life shattered. My job as a teacher, my students, the trust of the parents who believed in me, all of it flashed before my eyes. My reputation, my freedom, my family's respect, gone in seconds. I looked at my dad, desperate for some sign that he still believed me. But his jaw was clenched, his eyes hard. To him, I was guilty. To him, I had already crossed a line I could never come back from. And maybe you're wondering, did I fight back? Did I shout, flip the table, demand proof? I wanted to, but I was paralyzed. All I could think was, how could this even be happening? $500,000. I had never even seen that kind of money in my life. I was a teacher. I scraped by, paycheck to paycheck. I rented a tiny apartment in Brooklyn with squeaky floors and leaky pipes. My dad knew that. Everyone knew that. So why would anyone believe I suddenly had $500,000 stashed away? But evidence is louder than innocence. And that night, the evidence screamed. The officers didn't handcuff me, not yet. But the look in their eyes said they were seconds away from it. My mom tried to intervene, her voice shaking. There must be some mistake. Jessica isn't like that. My dad cut her off. Mistake? Look at the documents. Look at the transfers. Everything leads back to her. And in that moment, I realized something chilling. It didn't matter what I said. Truth had no weight if no one wanted to carry it. The room buzzed with silence. My heart pounded so loud it drowned everything else out. I could see Victoria glance at me, her expression unreadable, almost smug. I didn't know it then, but that look would haunt me for weeks. I know what you're thinking. This must have been the lowest point. But no, this was only the beginning. Because that night didn't just break my trust in my family. It ripped open a story so twisted, so unbelievable, that even I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't lived it myself. So let me ask you again, What would you do if your own father accused you of stealing $500,000 right in front of the people you loved and called the cops to your dinner table? Would you fight? Would you run? Or would you freeze, like I did, caught between disbelief and betrayal? This was my dinner, my family, my supposed safe place. And it turned into the moment my life unraveled. And if you think the worst part was being accused, wait until you hear what came next. They hadn't cuffed me yet. That was the only mercy in the room. The officers stood by the doorway, patient, professional, watching my family unravel under a chandelier that suddenly felt way too bright. My father paced. My mother pressed a napkin to her mouth as if it could hold the night together. Victoria stared at the tablecloth. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Then my mother did something I didn't expect. She stood. Her chair scraped the wood floor. The napkin dropped, and for once she didn't pick it up. She reached into her purse and pulled out a thin envelope, the kind you'd use for wedding invitations or overdue bills, and held it like it might burn her fingers. "Wait," she said softly at first, then stronger. "Before you take my daughter anywhere, there's something you need to see." The room shifted. Even the officers looked at her. My father frowned, the way he does when a deal isn't going his way. "Susan," he warned, This is exactly the time," she said, with a calm I've never heard from her. She handed the envelope to the older officer, the one with steady eyes. He opened it, laid the contents on the table, high-resolution photo prints, a few pages of typed notes, a time-stamped log. My stomach pitched. "I hired a private investigator," my mother said. 3 days ago I had to." Nothing about this made sense. My father's face flushed. "You went behind my back." "I went beside your fear," she answered. "Because fear makes us cruel." The officer slid a glossy print toward me. It was a still from a bank camera. Cold bluish light, a desk, a clerk leaning forward, a woman signing papers. The angle caught her profile. The hair was mine. The jacket looked like one I owned. The signature on the bottom of the form looked painfully familiar, but the jawline was just a touch sharper. The ear was tucked back in a way I never do. The officer placed a second print beside the first. Same woman, another angle. This one caught the eyes head on, and something inside me fought to recognize my own face and failed. It wasn't me. He placed a third print down, a wig cap peeking under the hairline, a tiny tell. And there it was, the flicker of a smirk I know better than my own reflection. The tilt of a chin that told a lifetime of stories about being first, being brightest, being chosen. "Victoria," I said. The name came out like a prayer and a bruise. My sister's wineglass trembled against the crystal. She didn't look up. Her lipstick left a nicked crescent on the rim. My father reached for the photos with shaking hands. He studied them in silence, his world rearranging one pixel at a time. "No," he whispered. But the paper didn't care what he believed. It only held what it saw. The officer tapped the timestamp printed in the corner. "Bank opening hour. Same day the account was created. Same branch your family uses for business." He glanced at the notes. The PI also obtained an internal camera angle the bank didn't include with the initial request. Different lens, clearer detail. The silence in our dining room wasn't silence anymore. It throbbed, it accused, it counted. I turned to Victoria. "Why?" My voice barely carried. "Why would you do this?" For a heartbeat she was stone. Then the stone cracked. A twitch at her mouth, a flinch in her shoulders. She set the glass down. The bass clinked too loudly, a little ring that felt like a bell for the end of an illusion. "It was supposed to be temporary," she said, but so quietly I almost missed it. "Temporary?" My father's voice broke. "You stole $500,000. Her throat worked. "I borrowed what I needed," she murmured, eyes still glued to the table. I needed to fix something. I was going to put it back." "Fix what?" The question formed like fog and then solidified into a storm. Flash? A memory slammed into me, the kind that doesn't ask permission. I'm in a crowded bar off the casino floor, months earlier, dragged there by Victoria after a quick dinner. Lights pulsing, ice clattering in tall glasses, that synthetic smell of new money and old cologne. She kept watching the door, twisting the thin silver bracelet on her wrist until it left little red moons on her skin. "You okay?" I asked over the noise. "Fine," she said, smiling too quickly. "Just work." She stepped outside to take a call, 10 minutes, then 20. When she returned, her smile had edges. "Let's go," she said. "It's loud here." Back at the table now, the memory receded, but the mood remained. "I don't gamble," my father said through his teeth. "You know what I think of people who do?" Victoria laughed, a small broken sound. "Yes, Dad, I know exactly what you think, quote." I pictured her at that bar, nail-tapping a glass, eyes scanning faces like she owed the room something. The flashback left a chill in my bones. "Look at me," I said. She finally did. The look in her eyes was a brittle mix, defiance lacquered over fear. "You used my name." "It was the only way," she said, and I flinched at her choice of words. The only way to what? Keep a house that was already too big? Maintain an image that ate her alive? Silence a debt that wouldn't be silenced? "I needed something clean," she whispered, voice fraying. "You were always clean, Jess. Untouchable good." She swallowed. "I thought if suspicion fell on you, it would never stick." The officers exchanged a glance. One lifted his notepad. My mother sat down slowly, as if her bones had aged in the last minute. My father pressed his palms to his temples. "Say the rest," I told my sister, though I didn't know what the rest meant until the words left my mouth. "Say what you did." Her eyes filmed with tears. She looked at the officers, at my mother, at me. Then she nodded once, the tiniest surrender. "I opened the account," she said. "I transferred the money. I used your ID. The room exhaled and then inhaled like it hadn't been breathing right for hours. I forged the signature," she added, almost calmly, as if listing items on a receipt. "I wore the wig." "You wore my face," I said. She flinched like I'd struck her. "I know." I waited for rage to wash over me and burn everything clean. It didn't. What came instead was a heavy, suffocating grief for a sister who couldn't ask for help, for a family that measured love in ledger lines, for a girl, me, who learned too young to speak softly so she wouldn't disturb anyone's admiration of someone else. My father's voice returned as a rasp. "Why, Victoria?" He wasn't the CEO anymore. He was just a father who had run out of explanations. Victoria looked at her hands. The manicure was perfect. The life around it wasn't. "Because the hole kept getting bigger," she said. "And I kept thinking I could fill it if I just moved faster." The older officer cleared his throat, careful. "We'll need statements from everyone." He glanced at me. "Miss Miller, you are no longer our primary subject of interest." Relief didn't come. Just a tremor in my knees. My mother reached for my hand. It was the smallest bridge, but it kept me from falling. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I should have seen it. In both of you?" Pattern interrupt, if you want to call it that, came from inside my own chest. A sudden surge of anger so pure it silenced the room's noise. Stakes. Say them out loud. My name, my job, my freedom, my future. They were chips on a table I never sat at. I turned to the camera stills and forced myself to look. The reality was there, colorless and perfectly framed. A woman who used to share my bedroom now wore my identity like a coat she could take off when she got home. "I need to hear you say it to me," I told her. "Not to them, to me." She nodded again, eyes red. "I'm sorry, Jess." The nickname swayed between us, a rope bridge over a ravine. "I did this to you." The apology was a drop in an ocean, but it was a drop. I stood on it. The officer began collecting the photos. "We'll need to go down to the station," he said, gentle. "All of you." My father sank into his chair as if it had been waiting to catch him all night. He looked at me, and for the first time since he asked his question, I recognized something human in his gaze. Bewilderment, regret, the first crack of doubt in his certainty. "I should have believed you," he said. It wasn't an apology. Not yet. But it was a trailhead. We left the table as if leaving a battlefield, plates half eaten, a candle guttering in a draft, the bottle of wine sweating on a coaster, its label smudged by fingerprints that told their own story. On the way out, I passed the mirror in the hallway and caught a glimpse of myself. Eyes too wide, mouth set in a line that didn't feel like mine. Funny how a reflection can lie and a grainy camera still can tell the truth. Outside, the night air hit my lungs like new rules. The city hummed, indifferent. Taxis blinked by. Somewhere a siren sang. You're probably wondering what I felt. Rage, relief, vindication, all of it. None of it. Mostly a stubborn thread of clarity. The truth had a pulse. It wasn't loud, it wasn't flashy, but it was alive. And if I wanted my life back, I'd have to learn how to keep that pulse going when the room got noisy again. If you've ever been blamed for someone else's mess, if you've ever had to prove you're not the person a lie says you are, stay with me. This is where the story stops being about what they did to me and starts being about what I did with the truth. They separated us at the station, glass walls. Fluorescent lights that made everyone look tired and a little guilty. I gave my statement over and over. Same timeline. Same. No, I didn't open that account. By the fourth retelling, my voice felt like paper. Then Detective Nora Reyes walked in. Not tall, not loud, just steady. The kind of steady you feel before you see. She set a paper cup of coffee in front of me and sat. No small talk. "Your sister mentioned a name," she said. "Scott Williams." The room shrank. I'd never met him, but I knew the type. The smooth voice at the end of a solution. The kind of man who calls disaster opportunity and means it. "Con artist," Reyes continued. "Financial schemes across 3 states. Offshore webs. He recruits people with access. People like your sister." The words landed like cold coins. Click, click, click. "What happens to me?" I asked. The teacher in me, the daughter in me, the woman whose name had been turned into a weapon, all of them sat up for the answer. "What happens next?" Reyes said. "Depends on how we play him." Play. The word tasted wrong. But the truth was uglier than any word for it. We were already in his game. I could either be a piece on his board or step up to the edge and move a piece of my own. In another room, Victoria was talking. She would later sign a formal statement. That night she gave us a map made of habits and mistakes. "He never leaves his phone unattended," she said. "He backs up to an encrypted server. He meets in loud places. He hates quiet. Says quiet is when people think straight." Reyes took notes with a pencil. Calm, precise, no hurry. "Where did he meet you?" "Hotel bars," Victoria said, eyes on the table. "Steakhouses with private rooms, and Soho cafes. He liked the noise. He said it made recordings useless." Reyes looked at me, a single look, a question, sure, but also a promise that whatever came next would not be reckless. "I'm not a cop," I said. "I'm a teacher." "You're also the only thing he thinks he understands," Reyes replied. "He believes you're the easy mark, the good girl, the cover story." "If he thinks you have something he needs, he'll come close enough for us to see him. Would you risk your life to clear your name?" I asked myself that in silence. My palms were damp. My heart tap danced against my ribs. Life? No, not willingly. But risk? Risk was already in the room. It had my signature, my face, my future. If I did nothing, it would keep eating. "What do you need me to do?" I asked. The plan came together like a slow door opening. No heroics, no cowboy moves, just patience, preparation, and bait. Not me exactly. The idea of me, the rumor of me, the online breadcrumb trail of someone who might have stumbled into something bigger than a family theft. Our first move was silence. For 3 days, I disappeared. From school, from social media, from the polite text that asked, "Are you okay?" I wasn't. But that wasn't the point. The point was to create space for a whisper to carry. Then we planted the whisper. Search terms I accidentally typed. Encrypted messages I failed to secure. A private chat where I mentioned a server in Prague and backup keys I don't understand. All of it crafted by Reyes's cyber unit, all of it traceable enough to be found by the kind of people who look for leaks. I hated every second of it, the performance, the pretending to be careless, the idea that he might be watching me through my own screens. But this wasn't about comfort. It was about leverage. Nights were the worst. The city hummed outside my window, and the hum sounded like footsteps. My phone buzzed with phantom notifications. I'd sit on the edge of the bed and count breaths until my pulse returned to normal. I wasn't brave. I was committed. There's a difference. On day 4, a message arrived from an unknown number, 3 dots, then text. "You're not as smart as you think." I stared at it, let it sit there like a snake. Another message followed. "You're in over your head, teacher. Let the adults handle it." My thumbs hovered. "Do nothing," Reyes had said. "Let him speak. Let him sell his fear as power." 30 minutes later, "Information for protection, Bluebird Cafe, Soho, 10 a.m., tomorrow come alone." Bluebird didn't look real when I Googled it. Too perfect, white tile, black and brass fixtures, plants that didn't droop. The kind of place where ideas are pitched and feelings are curated. "Of course he picked Soho," I told Reyes. "Noise, cameras, exits," she said. "He'll feel safe." I nodded. It was my turn to feel unsafe. We walked through the meeting 4 times, where I'd sit, what I'd say, what I wouldn't say, no names, no numbers, no offers, hints only. Let him fill the blanks with his guilty imagination. "Your only job," Reyes said, "is to keep him talking for 9 minutes. After that, we'll have what we need." "Why 9? "Because that's what our trace needs if he's layered his VPN-S. Her smile was dry. "And men like this always layer." I went home and laid out clothes like armor, not a costume, just me, clean lines, nothing flashy. He'd expect the easy mark. He would not get costume drama. He would get a woman with a spine made of the days she already survived. Sleep came late. When it came, it brought dreams of keyboards and empty chairs and signatures that moved on their own. I woke before my alarm and felt seasick in a room that wasn't moving. Soho in the morning is a different city. Delivery trucks sighing, baristas pulling shots with military focus, doors unlocking. A man hosed down a sidewalk. The water ran like quicksilver into the gutter. I got to Bluebird early and sat where the light was good but not blinding. I placed my phone face down on the table and ordered an espresso I didn't want. At 9:58, a man in a slate gray suit walked in, not glamorous, not the wolf at the door, just a man who had practiced blending, thinning hair, glasses, a tie that matched the idea of respectability. He scanned the room the way people do who are used to winning in places like this. His eyes landed on me and stayed there a beat too long, then he smiled. "Jessica," he said, stopping at my table. "Call me John." "Okay," I said. My voice was steady. I took that as a small victory. He sat without asking. No coffee, no food. He set a leather folio down and folded his hands the way men fold them when they want to look like they don't make mistakes. "You've been busy," he said, "and careless." "Maybe I'm just curious," I said. "Curiosity is expensive." He glanced at my phone. "You've been searching for servers you should not know exist. Asking questions you don't have the background to ask. Help me understand why. I shrugged, casual as borrowed light. Because someone used my name to do something I didn't do. And sometimes, when you step into a mess you didn't make, you find footprints. He smiled without warmth. Footprints can be misread. So can bank statements, I said. His eyes sharpened, then softened. Push, pull, the dance. I can help you, he said. Everyone wants this to go away. Your father, your sister, you. Help me how? By moving attention away from you, away from your family, toward a narrative that makes sense. Quote, quote, like what? Quote, quote. Like this was bigger than you, bigger than the company. Like you stumbled onto a network you don't understand. A small, precise shiver slid down my spine. He was telling me his fear and calling it an offer. Networks leave logs, I said, locations, handovers, sometimes even names. I let the word hang. Then, I'm not sure what I have. But if it's dangerous to me, it's dangerous to someone else. He leaned in. I could smell his cologne. Subtle, expensive, unmemorable. What do you think you have, Jessica? I think I have a breadcrumb, and I think the loaf is somewhere east, maybe Prague, maybe not. That was the line we'd rehearsed. Specific enough to prick, vague enough to be a trap. His nostrils flared, he recovered. And what do you want? My name back. I didn't blink. And to teach my students without parents Googling me at pickup. He chuckled, as if that was charmingly small. You want a quiet life? I can give you quiet. You give me the breadcrumb. We were at minute 6. My pulse hiccuped. I pictured Reyes's team listening from somewhere behind the hiss of the espresso machine. How do I know you're not just another liar? I asked. He tilted his head. Because liars don't offer receipts, I do. He slid the folio open a fraction. Paper whispered. I can make problems disappear. Can you make servers disappear? Something flitted across his face. Annoyance? Calculation? The truth doesn't always show up with flags. Sometimes it shows up as a pause. This was a pause. Servers are someone else's problem, he said lightly. I solve yours. I let silence sit between us. I let him feel how heavy it could get. Minute 8. Tell you what, I said, stirring an espresso I hadn't touched. You prove you can move one problem. I'll consider the rest. He smiled again, that boardroom-friendly smile that had probably closed 100 bad deals. You'll hear from me. He stood. He didn't shake my hand. He never looked back at the door. He slid into the street, swallowed by Soho's pretty noise. I exhaled the breath I'd been saving for emergencies. My fingers shook. My cup rattled against the saucer, a tiny symbol. Reyes appeared like a shadow softening into a person, her badge tucked away, her presence threaded with purpose. She didn't sit. She didn't need to. 9 minutes, 32 seconds, she said, low enough that it felt like a hand on my shoulder. We have a path. I nodded and looked at my phone. The screen was black. My reflection looked like a woman I recognized and a stranger I was just meeting. Was that him? I asked. Close enough, she said. And close is all we need to get closer. On the walk out, the city felt sharper. Sounds popped, colors had edges. I wasn't safe, but I wasn't helpless. There's a difference you can feel in your bones. If you've ever been forced into someone else's game, you know the first win is tiny. You stay on the board, and you choose the next move. If that's you, stay with me. The next move matters. The arrest didn't sound like the movies. No shouted lines, no slow clap. Just a door opening in a hallway I couldn't see, and Detective Reyes saying into her mic, "Copy. He's in custody," like she was ordering black coffee. The words slid through me and settled lower than my lungs. I didn't cry. I didn't cheer. I sat very still in that Soho cafe, hands around an empty cup, feeling heat that wasn't there. Back at the precinct, the air had the same fluorescent fatigue, but everything felt lighter by half an ounce. Victoria signed more papers than I knew existed. Her pen scratched. Her ankle bracelet clicked when she shifted in the chair. She didn't look at me, and I didn't ask her to. We were past the kind of talking that fixes things. We were in the quiet after the storm, the part where you count roofs. Most of the funds are traceable now, Reyes told my parents in a windowed room that made us look like we lived in a fishbowl. Not all, but most. The network will take time. For tonight, go home. Home sounded like another language, but we went. The city had that late-night shine. Taxis dragging streaks of yellow, steam lifting from grates like breath. My mother sat beside me in the back seat, hands folded in her lap in a way that reminded me of church. My father stared out the window, jaw working like he was chewing through old beliefs. No one spoke. We didn't have the words yet. At my apartment door, my father stopped me with a hand on my arm. Not rough, careful. "Jessica," he said, and my name sounded heavy with someone's first truth. I was wrong. I nodded because if I said anything, the moment might evaporate. He cleared his throat. "I will make it right," he added, as if right was an invoice that could be settled. It wasn't, but I took the intention and put it somewhere safe. Sleep that night was strange, too quiet. I kept hearing the cafe's hiss, the spoon against ceramic. "He's in custody." I woke before dawn with my heart beating at the wrong tempo and stood by the window until the sky shifted from navy to something like forgiveness. In the morning, my phone exploded. Texts, emails, a voicemail from the superintendent asking me to call back. The subject lines were all versions of good news, and "we're here for you," which is what people say when they don't know what else to say. I called the superintendent first. "We've reviewed everything," she said. "With the new evidence and the police statement, the board is prepared to reinstate you. We'd like you back in your classroom Monday." I closed my eyes. Monday. The day of lists and crayons and, "Good morning, Ms. Miller." I didn't realize until that second how much I'd missed the sound of 8-year-olds trying to whisper and failing. At school, the welcome was soft. Not balloons, not a banner. Just my name on the whiteboard in my own handwriting, the one I hadn't used in weeks, Jessica Miller. A few parents waited outside my door at pickup, their faces careful. One mother hugged me fast and awkward. "We're glad you're here," she said. Another father, eyes shiny with guilt, offered a hand and an apology that tripped over itself. I took both. Not because everything was fixed, but because beginnings are built from small yeses. The kids, though, kids don't perform reassurance. They just feel. "We made habitats without you," one said, tugging my sleeve. "But we saved the frogs for this week." Another held up a drawing of me with superhero hair and a cape that said truth. It was too much and exactly enough. I started to walk differently through my days. Slower, but not fragile. I could feel the weight of what didn't crush me becoming its own kind of backbone. Lesson plans filled the corners again. I taught compound words and patience, both complicated in their own way. At recess, I stood under the maple and watched a group of kids negotiate their own treaty about the swings. "Use your words," I called, and laughed at myself because really, that was all I had ever wanted. Words that worked. At home, I made dinner like a ritual. Pan sizzling, jazz low, the metronome of a knife against the board. I didn't check the door lock 3 times anymore. Twice would do. The little changes told me I was coming back to myself. Victoria's sentencing came faster than I expected. Courtrooms have a smell. Polish and paper, old air, someone's cologne. She stood straight, hair pulled back, a person trying on remorse that might finally fit. The judge spoke about responsibility and restitution, about cooperation and consequences. Time was handed down like a measuring cup, years, then months, then days. My mother cried into a tissue she'd brought from home. My father didn't move for a full minute after the gavel touched wood. Outside the courthouse, reporters asked things that felt like math you can't do in public. I said little. Truth doesn't always need a paragraph. Sometimes it needs a comma and a look weeks past. I built a routine sturdy enough to lean on. Fridays, I called my parents before they could call me. Sunday nights, I ironed blouses like a person who expected to be seen. I even slept with the window cracked, trusting the city to sing me something that wasn't danger. One afternoon, my dad visited my classroom. I didn't announce him. He sat in the back while I read a story about a girl who plants a seed and waits. After, he pushed his hands into his pockets the way he does when he's trying not to say the wrong thing. "I see what you do," he said, quiet. I didn't before. We stood in the hallway looking at bulletin boards covered in construction paper and spelling lists. "Numbers kept me safe," he admitted, not looking at me. "Your work, it makes people brave." I didn't have a category for that. I do, I told him. "It's called being useful." He smiled with his eyes more than his mouth. We were learning a new language together. Money trickled back, not all enough. The detective sent updates that sounded like weather reports. Fronts moving, pressure dropping. My father talked to accountants and lawyers about lines of credit and impact and rebuilding. The word rebuilding started to feel less like a sentence and more like a plan. One evening, I walked home through the park with coffee I didn't need and watched a woman teach her child to ride a bike. The kid wobbled and wailed, and then suddenly remembered how to trust momentum. I felt that in my ribs. The moment the forward motion catches. At dinner with my parents, we started simple, no china, no speeches. My mother made pasta and sprinkled parsley like confetti. We ate at the kitchen table that has a water ring from the summer I spilled lemonade during a heat wave. We let ourselves be ordinary. We talked about a book club I might join, a new bus route, the neighbor's dog who refuses to heal. Ordinary felt like a luxury I hadn't budgeted for. Here's the part I want you to hear if you're still with me. Forgiveness did not arrive in a bow. It came as a series of imperfect moments where no one ran. We stood there. We chose each other, even while the ground remembered its fractures. That's what healing looked like in our house. Not a miracle, a discipline. I started writing again, late at night, the way I did in college when papers were due and the world felt possible. Not essays, not grand statements, just small stories about holding on to yourself when the wind wants your name. I wrote them for me, but I guess I wrote them for you too. People began to ask me to speak. Librarians, a community center, one PTA meeting where the microphone squealed and we all laughed. I said I would think about it. I didn't want to become the person who only ever talked about the worst week of her life. But I did want to tell the truth in rooms that needed it. Maybe that was the same thing. Maybe not. One night, I stood on my tiny balcony with a mug of tea and looked at a sky that had remembered how to be wide. The building across from me glowed in rectangles. Somewhere, a trumpet practiced scales. It sounded like failing, and then like music, truth heals. It doesn't fix, it doesn't erase, it heals. The difference is the part you live. If you've ever fought like hell to get your name back, if you've ever walked into a room where people expected you to break and you didn't, share this with someone who needs a handhold. Sometimes knowing a stranger survived is the first step to imagining you will too. The lights in my apartment hummed. I turned them off one by one, left the balcony door cracked for a breeze, and let quiet carry me toward sleep. But peace never lasts, right? Peace didn't explode, it leaked. It started with a vibration on my nightstand at 5:42 a.m. A time my phone should be asleep and I should be dreaming boring dreams about lesson plans. One message, then 3, then 11. The sound was thin and relentless, like a mosquito that learned Morse code. I rolled over and checked. Unknown number. "You think this is over?" Another. "You like cameras so much. Here's one you'll love." A link followed, short and ugly, like it had something to hide. I didn't touch it, not yet. I put both feet on the floor, breathed in the dusty, cold air of a room that hadn't warmed up to the sun, and reminded myself that fear wants you frantic. I made coffee. I washed my face. I opened the link. The video loaded with that little spinning wheel that makes you feel helpless. Then it began. Grainy hallway footage. A school corridor I knew too well. A man's handoff frame passing me an envelope. Me taking it. Me sliding it into my tote. Me nodding, looking around, tucking hair behind an ear like a person with secrets. A timestamp sat in the corner, smug. A title bar shouted, "Teacher takes cash. Proof." My heartbeat turned percussive. The video jumped to a classroom, my classroom. I was at my desk, head bent, counting bills I have never touched. The camera panned, conveniently, a stack of 20s, a whisper of a smirk, a close-up of my face like a confession. I knew it wasn't real. I also knew that didn't matter, not at first, not online. Would you believe what you see online? By 6:03, the link lived on 3 parent group chats. By 6:11, a cousin I hadn't spoken to in 2 years messaged, "Is this you?" With 6 question marks like punctuation could drag me to shore. By 6:20, my inbox was a pile of smoke. The subject lines came preloaded with judgment. So disappointed, explain, not surprised, TBH. I called Detective Reyes. She answered on the second ring, voice already awake. "I'm looking at it," she said. "No hello, no preamble. Don't engage, don't comment. Send me every link you find." "It's my classroom," I whispered. "It's my face." "It's a deep fake," she said. "And a decent one." But decent isn't bulletproof. At 7 o'clock, I walked into school through a door that had always felt like a promise. Today it felt like a test. The receptionist glanced up and then down. The security guard nodded too formally, his hand hovering near the sign-in sheet. In the hallway, 2 kids waved and then stared past me like I was a commercial they weren't allowed to watch. The principal called me into her office before the first bell. Her office smells like citrus and policies. She had printed the email from the district HR because they always print the emails that matter most. "We're placing you on administrative leave," she read, voice careful, like each syllable might shatter. "Effective immediately, with pay." With pay. The way a Band-Aid comes with cartoon characters. It still covers a wound. I started. "I know," she said, and I believed her. But parents are already calling. The district needs to be seen doing something, such a wide word. It holds multitudes, and none of them are fair. I cleaned out my desk with both hands shaking. A plant I'd kept alive for 3 years looked at me like I'd betrayed it. The ceramic frog from our habitat project stared with permanent optimism. I slid papers into a box without reading the names in the corners. On the way out, a boy handed me a picture of a volcano. "It's for you," he said. "Because you like eruptions." I smiled in a shape that wasn't quite a smile and told him to keep it safe for me. Outside, the sky had that neutral gray New York uses when it wants to avoid blame. I called my mother. She cried before I finished the first sentence. My father didn't cry. He went quiet as a ledger. "We'll fix it," he said. He was talking to himself as much as to me. The video kept multiplying. Comments piled like dirty snow. Some were knives, some were handshakes, most were noise. One account posted a slowed-down version with red circles and arrows. Another layered in a narrator's voice, oily and certain. "Watch the eyes, that's guilt. My eyes, borrowed, bent, weaponized." Reyes texted me screenshots from her lab. Frame-by-frame analysis, compression artifacts, edges that didn't track with physics. "See this," she wrote. "Micro shadow drift. The lighting source shifts, but your supposed cheek shadow doesn't. Fake." Another. "Reflection on the window shows a different arm movement. Fake." They could prove it, but proof takes time. The internet doesn't. That afternoon, a message arrived from the same unknown number. You wanted quiet. We can do quiet. Bring what you have. Or watch it get loud. What did I have? A reputation, a classroom, a sister trying to build a smaller life inside a larger mistake. Parents who had just learned how to look at me without flinching. They were right about one thing: loud hurts. It vibrates your bones. It moves faster than truth. I sat at my kitchen table and stared at the salt shaker for a full minute because I needed something in the room to be exactly what it claimed to be. Salt stayed. Salt, good. The union rep called. "We're with you," she said. "We've seen this before now. The tech changes, the panic's the same. Take notes, save everything. Don't feed it. Don't feed it." But what if it was already feeding on me? A parent emailed at 8:52 p.m. : "My daughter says you're still a hero. I don't know what to believe, but I hope it's you." I read that one twice, then a third time, then let it sit open like a small lamp. Sleep did not come. When it flirted with the edges, it brought dreams where my face unzipped and someone else stepped out. I woke at 3:17 with my jaw clenched so hard my teeth ached. I got up, paced the rectangle of my living room, and made tea I didn't drink. Morning brought more noise and, unbelievably, new versions of the video. In one, the envelope was bigger. In another, I was smiling wider. The edits were crude, then clever, then crude again, like different hands had taken turns. A hashtag bloomed and then crawled across platforms like ivy. People don't need to know you to decide you deserve a story. I sent everything to Reyes. She replied with a sentence I folded into my pocket. "We are building the counter-narrative with evidence, not volume. Evidence, not volume." That sounded like a prayer and a plan. By noon, my father called. He had the voice he uses when he's about to buy a company or dismantle one. "We hired an independent forensic team," he said. "They'll coordinate with the detective. We're also drafting a statement, quote, quote, about me, quote, quote. About truth," he said. And I let him have that word because he needed it. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed with an unknown area code. I picked up. Silence. Then a man's voice, pleasant and anonymous, the kind that sells vitamins on late-night radio. "Jessica," he said. "It doesn't have to be like this. Who is this?" "Someone who can make problems go away. Bring what you found, the server, the breadcrumb, we tidy up, everyone rests." "My problem is a lie wearing my face," I said. "Can you tidy that?" He chuckled. "Everything is a narrative. Choose a better one." Bah, the line clicked dead. I stared at my reflection in the black screen and saw a woman too tired to perform composure. My hands wanted to throw something. I didn't. I put the phone down like it might bruise and breathed through the urge to vanish. You want to know the worst part? It wasn't the strangers. It was the people who loved me sending the video with just checking in as if neutral words could cover sharp edges. It was their need to be near the story for a second, to taste scandal like sugar and then claim they hated the taste. In the middle of all that, my mother showed up with soup. She didn't say much. She sat at my table, spooned broth, and looked at me like I was still 8 and had scraped my knee. "We will sit with you," she said finally. "As long as it takes." I nodded. Sometimes the only counter to a lie is a room that refuses to leave. That evening, the district sent a second email to families. "Please refrain from sharing unverified media. The investigation continues." A sensible sentence. It did not stop anyone, but a few parents forwarded it to me with little notes. "We took the posts down. We're waiting. We told our kids not to talk about it. Small lamps. I collected them. I kept thinking about my students, about how we teach them to check sources, to spot manipulated images, to pause before hitting share. And here I was, a living case study, a person becoming a cautionary tale. I stood in front of my mirror and practiced saying one sentence out loud. I will not let a fake define me. It sounded corny and then true, and then necessary, at 10:13 p.m. A new clip dropped. Same hallway, new angle. This time, the envelope had a logo, my school's logo. My blood went cold. I called Reyes. She didn't swear. She saved her words like expensive perfume. They're escalating, she said. That means they're worried. Worried about what? About us getting there first. I sank onto the couch and stared at the ceiling crack I always meant to fix. It looked like a map, a thin black river drifting toward somewhere. I whispered to the empty room. I am not this. Then louder, I am not this. If you've ever watched a lie try to eat your life, hear me. The lie is loud because it's hollow. It needs your attention to feel full. Don't feed it. Feed your evidence. Feed your people. Feed your breath. I know some of you have seen things online and believed them because believing is faster than thinking. I don't blame you. Speed feels like safety. But sometimes the bravest thing you can do is wait 12 hours or 24, or as long as it takes for the facts to show up with their shoes tied. If this story hit you in the gut, if it made you question how quickly a face can be borrowed and sold, send it to one person who needs a reminder to slow down before they share. I'm not asking for a crusade. I'm asking for a pause. The right kind of pause can save a life. It might be mine. It might be yours. The morning after the new clip dropped, I didn't check my phone first. I checked my pulse. Still there, uneven, but there. The kettle hissed. The city yawned. I stood in my kitchen with both hands wrapped around a mug and said it out loud to no one. To you, to the part of me that wanted to hide under the bed. I am not this. Then I opened my laptop. The dashboard looked like a storm map, mentions climbing, shares ticking, comments breeding. I could have watched it for hours and learned nothing except how fast a lie can sprint. So I closed the tab and dialed Detective Reyes. We're moving, she said. Digital forensics is in. I want you to meet someone. 2 hours later, I was in a windowless lab that smelled like dust, coffee, and a little like burned patients. Monitors lined the walls. A whiteboard held terms I teach 11-year-olds to pronounce. Light source, trajectory, reflection. Except here, they were wearing graduate degrees. A woman with a messy bun and eyes that had not slept enough stepped forward and shook my hand. I'm Dr. Lena Park, she said. You're not the first deepfake. You won't be the last, but you might be the clearest. I wanted to hug her and cry and hire her as a permanent bodyguard. I did none of that. I nodded like a person who could handle sentences. She pulled up the clip, the envelope scene, then split the screen. Left, the fake. Right. My original classroom footage from a day the custodians waxed the floors, pulled from the school's archive with permission and a stack of signatures. They used this, she said, tapping the right. They mapped a new face over yours over yours. It's perverse and lazy and surprisingly effective. Can you prove it? I asked. Watch. She zoomed into the edge of my jawline, frame by frame. On the fake video, the hairline lagged by 3 pixels every time I turned my head. Human eyes don't see pixels, but human eyes feel wrongness. Microlag, Lena said. Also check the glasses in the background. The reflection's off by about 13 degrees. Light doesn't do that unless it's being told a bad story. She clicked again. The timestamp pulsed. They layered a moving overlay, but forgot time bleeds differently when you composite from sources with different frame rates. The seconds hiccup. See that jump at 0014? No corresponding change in footfall sound. Physics calls foul. The hallway clip. The close-up of Cash that was never mine. The logo that wasn't printed at the time the fake claimed it was. One by one, she pulled threads until the sweater gave up trying to be a sweater. Here's the plan, Reyes said. You'll walk through this in plain language, no jargon. People don't need lectures, they need handles. We'll give them 3: shadow drift, reflection mismatch, and the timestamp glitch. And if they don't want to believe me? Belief is sticky, she said. But facts are heavier than hashtags when you put them in someone's hand. We practiced. I sat at a metal table across from a camera and stumbled over words like parallax and pixel interpolation. Lena stopped me with a small smile. Say it like you'd say it to your students. Okay, I said. The shadow should move when I move. It doesn't. The window reflection should mimic the action. It doesn't. The clock should tick evenly. It hiccups. Better, she said. Keep it there. We rehearsed what I'd do when trolls flooded the live chat. You won't look, Reyes said. You'll pin 3 comments, one from a parent, one from a tech explainer, one from a kid who says they miss Science Friday. You'll talk to them, not to the noise. A pause. The kind that lets fear try to rent space. I filled it with a sentence that felt like a plank over water. I thought about quitting, but then I realized truth deserves a voice. That's my diary line. I write it on a Post-it, stick it to my monitor, write it again in the back of my planner. If you need to borrow it, take it. I've got more ink. You might think the hard part was the tech. It wasn't. The hard part was calling my parents and saying I was going to go live. Not with a PR-approved statement, not with a lawyer at my elbow, with my teacher voice and a stack of evidence. My mother didn't hesitate. I'll sit in the room, she said. You won't be alone. My father hesitated exactly 1 beat. We'll route stable internet, he said, because that is how he loves. Logistics first, then the soft parts, and security. We set a time, Thursday, 8 p.m., New York. Early enough for parents to watch. Late enough for West Coast friends to catch it without sneaking out of meetings. Too late for my students, which mattered. I didn't want them watching live. I wanted their parents to tell them in the morning, with gentleness, that their teacher had been brave and boring in all the right ways. For 2 days, I prepared like an athlete with a small stadium and a humble sport. I wrote my beats on index cards, not a script beats. The story spine, what happened, what was faked, how we know, what to do next. I recorded practice runs and played them back until my own voice didn't make me flinch. I ate real food. I walked around the block twice a day. I told the internet nothing. There was one more thing I needed. A human story that wasn't mine. I opened a box from my classroom and pulled out the volcano drawing. On the back, tiny handwriting, for Miss Miller, because eruptions look scary, but they make new land. I cried in a quiet, private way that didn't ruin the paper. Then I tucked the drawing into the stack beside my laptop. Pattern interrupt. I opened a new doc and wrote 3 questions I'd ask the audience directly. Have you ever shared something and learned later it wasn't true? Who did it hurt? What would it look like to pause next time? I taped those to the ring light. I wanted to remember we weren't chasing villains. We were inviting grown-ups to be braver grown-ups. On Thursday afternoon, Lena sent me the final visuals. Clean, simple slides. Not the kind that show off the lab, the kind that teach. She titled them like a reading lesson. Where the shadow lies, the honest window, when the clock trips. I loved her for that. At 7:30, my apartment turned into a studio, a borrowed mic, a laptop on a stack of cookbooks, a plant in the background that I remembered to water. My mother sat on the couch, hands wrapped around tea. My father checked the router one last time, like routers retire when unobserved. I took 3 slow breaths and pictured my classroom. The rug, the hand-raising, the way kids lean forward when a story gets good. 7:58. Comments started lining up in the chat like people waiting for a train. Some names I knew, some names I didn't. A couple of burners with profile pictures that looked like unlicensed clip art. I ignored them. I pinned 3 comments just like we planned. The one from a parent made my throat tight. We're here. Take your time. 8 o'clock. I clicked Go Live. Hi, I said. I'm Jessica. I teach 3rd grade. Someone took my face and used it to tell a lie. I'm going to show you how to see the lie. I kept my voice low and the sentences shorter than habit. I told them about the hallway that wasn't right. I showed them the 3 frames where the shadow betrayed itself. I zoomed in on the window and let everyone see the reflection move left when my hand moved right. I pulled up the timestamp and played the part where seconds stuttered, then the raw footage where time behaved like time. If your eyes feel confused, I said, that's not because you're dumb. It's because your brain is honest. It knows when something's off even when it can't name it. I could feel the room with me. You know that feeling? When the air changes because everyone in it has decided to listen, really listen. It was like that, except there were thousands of rooms. I told them the only 3 things I wanted from them tonight. 1, don't share the fake again, even to call it fake. Starve it. 2, talk to your kids about how to slow down before they post. Use my video as a homework assignment if you want. I can handle being homework. 3, if you've ever shared something that turned out to be wrong, forgive yourself and get better. The chat flew, but slower now, less frantic. Questions pinged, good ones. I answered what I could. No, I don't know who made it, I said. Yes, the police are involved. Yes, this is criminal. No, I'm not reading the mean comments. I'm reading yours. Then I held up the volcano drawing. I told them what the kid wrote on the back. Eruptions make new land, I said. This is me choosing to stand on the new land. You can stand here with me or at least not kick sand on it. You could call it corny. I call it 3rd grade science with a pulse. When I finished the demo, I looked straight into the camera and told the truth that had kept me breathing this week. My job is to make complicated things feel possible. Today, that includes my own life. I ended the stream before I could ramble. The room stayed quiet for a second. Then my mother exhaled like she'd been holding her breath since Monday. My father said nothing and handed me a glass of water as if water were a medal. I laughed. It came out wobbly. My phone vibrated. Reyes, that was clean. Also, watch your inbox. Quote, the emails came fast. Parents, colleagues, strangers with kind cynicism. A tech reporter asked for an interview. I said maybe later. A high school media literacy teacher requested permission to use the stream in class. I said yes, please, take it. 2 students' families sent short videos of their kids practicing pause and check before sharing a meme. I watched both twice and saved them in a folder called Proof That People Learn. I slept that night. Not long, not perfectly, enough. I dreamed about a classroom window that reflected everything honestly and woke up smiling because I knew one existed. If you're still here, if this chapter put something sturdy in your hands, pass it to one person who rushes. Tell them to slow down with you. Tell them truth may not shout, but it shows up when invited. Because that invitation is coming again, and when it does, I'll be ready. The morning after the stream, my apartment felt bigger, same walls, same plant, same stack of cookbooks holding up the laptop. But space had opened where dread used to sit. I brewed coffee that tasted like a beginning and checked my inbox with both eyes open, ready for whatever shape the world had decided to be. It wasn't quiet. It was kind. Not all of it. Nothing ever is. But enough. Parents wrote to say they'd watched with their kids and paused to spot the shadow drift together. A librarian in Toronto asked for permission to host a community slow before share night with my video as the opener. A head teacher from Manchester invited me to beam into their assembly for 5 minutes to tell students what honesty looks like when it gets hard. The numbers climbed in a way that scared me less than I thought they would. 20,000 views, then 100, then 500. By noon, the counter turned into something abstract. By evening, 1 million was a sentence that didn't fit into my mouth. Views aren't proof and they aren't love. But they can be a road. People were walking toward me, not away. Detective Reyes texted a single line. Noise trending down, signal trending up, and a small graph that looked like a hill righting itself. Lena sent an email with 3 attachments: condensed slides for parents, a child-friendly handout with cartoons that made me laugh out loud, and a sheet titled, "How to Tell a Kid You Shared Something Wrong." That last one almost broke me. We forget how heavy grown-ups feel about their mistakes. We forget they were children once who needed a script. At pickup time, I walked to school even though I was still on leave. I stood across the street with a coffee I didn't finish and watched kids spring from doors like sentences that couldn't wait for punctuation. A mother crossed to me, hands knotted together. "We watched," she said. My son said, "Ms. Miller is a scientist of truth. I think that means thank you." I swallowed the lump in my throat and smiled. "Tell him I'll take that title." By the end of the week, the district invited me to a meeting in a room with a long table and a pitcher of water that sweated under fluorescent lights. The superintendent, the principal, HR, a lawyer, a union rep, paper shuffling, chairs scooting, faces arranged in readiness. "We owe you an apology," the superintendent said first. No hedging, no passive voice. "We moved fast because the internet moved fast. We should have moved right." "I understand," I said, and I did. Fear makes institutions clumsy, but it doesn't have to make them cruel. I want to come back, and I want to teach what happened. The lawyer looked up from his notes. "Teach the incident?" "Teach media literacy like it's reading," I said, "because it is. Teach what a shadow should do. Teach how a clock should tick. Teach how to pause before pressing share. Use me. I'm okay with that." Silence. Then the union rep smiled like the first sunny day after a string of gray. "Let's build it," she said. The next 2 weeks felt like a sprint and a hymn. With Lena's team, I turned my live demo into short, clean modules. We filmed in an empty classroom with afternoon light and a whiteboard that still had a faint ring where a world map used to hang. I wore the same sweater twice because it looked like someone who didn't care much about sweaters. We called the series Truth Tools because kids like titles that sound like they can fit in a backpack. Episode 1. Where the Shadow Lies. I held a flashlight and a paper cutout and let the shadow obey. Then I showed the fake, where it didn't. No jargon, just, "Does this look like real life to you?" Episode 2. The Honest Window. We made a window from acrylic and let reflections be mirrors with manners. Then we let the fake argue with physics, and we told the truth gently, like a teacher who knows you want to get the answer right. Episode 3. When the Clock Trips. We played a metronome and watched video time refuse to keep the beat. We laughed and said, even clocks get clumsy when someone edits them wrong. Parents started sending clips of their kids pointing out shadow drift in cartoons, timestamp hiccups in memes, a reflection that didn't match in a viral, caught-on-camera post. This could have been a tragedy I hid from. It became a class everyone showed up for. In the middle of that good work, the investigation moved. Reyes called me in. Her desk was a landscape of file folders and neatly cruel facts. "We traced key upload points," she said. "They misrouted well, then got lazy. One node ties to an associate of Scott Williams. Another to a burner purchased 3 blocks from the cafe where you met John. We're building the case." "Will there be handcuffs?" I asked before I could stop myself. "There will be accountability," she said, which is the grown-up word for handcuffs, and also for a lot of quieter, harder things. My father listened and didn't interrupt once. When we left the precinct, he put a hand on my shoulder and squeezed. "You did this," he said softly. "Not the catching, the turning. The turning of it into something useful. Useful. The word he'd needed. The one I'd given back. Then came the night the numbers tipped from viral to visiting homes. I scheduled a public talk. Part town hall, part class, part confessional. We hosted it online and in the school auditorium because the community wanted seats and the internet wanted links. My principal stood in the doorway passing out programs. My mother sat in the front row with a thermos because she never trusts school coffee. My father hovered near the soundboard like an engineer who had found his true calling. I stepped up to a simple podium with a mic that didn't squeal. The lights were warm. The air held that gentle hum of people who intend to listen. I wasn't shaking. I was ready. "Hi," I said. "I'm Jessica. I teach 3rd grade. 2 months ago, a video tried to make me into a person I'm not. Tonight, I'm going to do the easiest hard thing I know how to do. Tell you a story and give you 3 tools. I told the story clean. No blame for the audience that believed quickly. No victory laps for myself. I named the harm. I named the help. I named the stakes out loud. My name, my job, my kids, your kids, our neighborhood's ability to tell day from night in an age that paints windows on walls and calls them doors. Then I taught. We dimmed the lights for truth tools. The slides landed. The demo landed. People laughed in the right places, gasped in the right places, and got quiet where they should get quiet. A teenager in the 4th row raised his hand and asked how to talk to a grandparent who shares everything because they want to feel included. We practiced sentences. We practiced generosity. Midway through the Q&A, the principal slipped me a note. "Local news is live streaming this. You're at 1. 8 million concurrent across platforms." I blinked and tucked the note under my palm like it might fly away. I didn't look at the cameras. I looked at the faces. A father stood and said, "I reposted the fake, I'm sorry." He didn't cry. He looked straight at me, then at his kid, then at the floor, then back at me. "We took it down. We watched your stream. We're learning." "Thank you," I said. Because what else is there to say when someone brings you their worst and asks if it can be made into better? That's all any of us can do. Do better next time and help someone else do better too. After the talk, people lined up, not for selfies, though there were a few, but for stories. A nurse who'd been doxxed, a small business owner whose Yelp got mobbed by a competitor's friends, a college kid who'd been in a class group chat when a rumor ruined a roommate's year. We stood there and built a small temporary city out of the understanding that truth takes time and we can choose to be the kind of people who give it that time. The district lifted my leave. The email came with signatures and seals, but the real reinstatement happened when I walked into my classroom Monday morning and 22 kids yelled, "Ms. Miller," like a choir that had practiced all weekend. We circled up on the rug. "We're going to learn a new word," I said. "Forensics." They giggled. We learned it anyway. 2 days later, the mayor's office called. They wanted to fund a pilot, Project Clear Window, training teachers across the city to use Truth Tools modules. I said yes, then called Lena and screamed into her voicemail like a teenager at a concert. My father cried in a quiet hallway and pretended it was allergies. My mother baked 2 pies and pretended she had a bake sale. Accountability came, just like Reyes promised. The DA announced charges for the associate who seeded the files. Scott's name appeared in legal documents in a way that made it plain. His hands were on the levers even from a cell. It wasn't a movie moment, no gavel thunder, just paperwork and consequences and a system, for once, moving toward sense. I visited Victoria. "I don't owe you the details, but I'll give you the shape. 2 sisters, a plastic chair, an apology she had been practicing, a forgiveness I'm still building. Truth heals. It doesn't erase. It stitches. It leaves seams you can feel when the weather changes, but seams hold things together." On the night the pilot launched, I stood on my balcony under a sky that had the good manners to show a few stars. The city breathed its complicated, loyal breath. I held the volcano drawing and thought about new land, the kind that grows when the old ground breaks. "Hi," I said into the camera for a short video to close the loop with everyone who had stayed. If you believe truth matters, share this story, not because it's mine, because it's ours. Because somewhere out there is a kid who needs you to pause before you post, a parent who needs language for their apology, a teacher who needs a reminder that boring, careful honesty can flood a room with light. I ended the recording, I sent it. I turned off the ring light that had lived on my kitchen counter, like an extra sun. The apartment went back to itself, quiet, ordinary, earned. If you've been with me since the dinner where a question cracked my world, thank you. If you joined at the cafe, or the fake video, or the night we learned to read shadows together, thank you. Carry what we learned, teach it. Tell someone you love that their dignity doesn't belong to the internet. Tomorrow I'll teach compound words and a little bit of physics. I'll eat cafeteria pizza that insists on being called Italian. I'll tell a kid that their handwriting is a miracle because it's theirs. I'll keep building Project Clear Window with people who make hard things feel possible. And if another lie knocks on my door, I'll answer with a flashlight, a window, and a clock that keeps the beat.